The wage theft among contractors, the Economic Policy Institute found in total the average low-wage worker loses a stunning $2,634 a year in unpaid wages, representing 15% of their earned income. A recent report by the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee of the United States Senate revealed that 35% of the largest Department of Labor penalties for wage theft were levied against federal contractors. And similarly, the National Employment Law Project found that 21% of federal contractors were not paid overtime, and 11% were forced to work off the clock. Now, here in Congress, we've been fighting to raise the minimum wage. It hasn't been easy. We have not been able to build a consensus. But I think that both Republicans and Democrats alike can agree that if you earn the money, you should get the money that you earn, even if it's not as much as we think you should earn. So the Progressive Caucus has taken some action in concert with our allies like Good Jobs Nation and others. And what we've done is offered amendments to the appropriation bills on 5 different bills. And we've been able to pass the amendments 4 different times. One of them, we demanded a recorded vote. And some people said, look, you just won on the voice vote, just let it go. We said, yeah, we know we won on the voice vote, but we just want to see who's going to stand with the workers publicly. All the Democrats did, and 25 Republicans did, much to their credit, and we appreciate that. And so, right now, what we want to push for is a Good Jobs in Federal Contracting executive order. Wage theft isn't the only thing that's been driving down real wages. The erosion of collective bargaining has had a major impact as well. The President has an opportunity to put millions of people on the path to the middle class. The Progressive Caucus sent President Obama a letter yesterday asking him for an executive order that ensures that federal contract workers are protected in three ways. 1, contracting labor and employment law protections. The government should know if a prospective contractor has broken workplace laws like the Fair Labor Standards Act. If it has, it shouldn't be allowed the privilege to contract. We should close loopholes in existing workplace contractor laws like the Service Contracts Act so that more workers are covered by them. I believe that there are enough people who want to do business with the federal government, which is the largest buyer of goods and services in the country, enough honest contractors for us to do business with. Also, number 2, adopting a fair compensation preference. Companies that pay their employees fairly and give them health care, paid sick, and family leave should get a competitive advantage when pursuing federal contract over those who don't. And then thirdly, respecting workers' rights to negotiate. Companies that allow collective bargaining should get a competitive advantage. Now, this has been done before. Actually, it was President Theodore Roosevelt who passed an executive order allowing the right to collectively bargain. And because of the work that he did in the 1930s, it helped set a tone through the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s when working people really had a very solid quality of life. But since the rate of unionization has gone down and a lot of other factors, it's just been a lot tougher for working people. And so I'm very honored and pleased to introduce to you my colleague and dear friend, the Minority Whip, Mr. Steny Hoyer, who's joined us as well. Mr. Hoyer.
Well, thank you very much, Keith Ellison, the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. I want to thank you, and I want to thank your colleague, Mr. Grijalva, who co-chairs the caucus with you. This ought to be called the principled caucus as well as the Progressive Caucus. It ought to be called the Fairness Caucus as well as the Progressive Caucus. It ought to be called the American Caucus as well as the Progressive Caucus because it speaks to the values of opportunity in our country. I tell people that people came to America very early on so they could make it in life, so they could succeed, so they could seize opportunity. And everybody who's come to this country or grown up in this country thought America was special. It was special because, in fact, if you work hard, and as Bill Clinton used to say, play by the rules, you could make it in America. You could succeed, and you could have the kind of quality of life that you and your family aspired for. So I thank the caucus for having this hearing. I want to thank our panelists today as well. I want to thank you for bravely speaking out. about the practice of wage theft, to which Mr. Ellison referred earlier. Edelicia, how do you pronounce that name?
Edelicia.
Edelicia. Edelicia. Well, I'll try to get there. The two Carlas are a little easier. We have got bookends here, the Carla and Carla. And Robert, you're in the middle. And Keith, Robert's parents, is that correct?
I'm not Robert, I'm here translating for them.
Oh.
Robert's over there.
Who's this young man?
That's my son, Diego.
Diego. His parents live in my, his grandparents live in my district. So he is very special to me. I want to thank all of you for being here. Robert, I want to thank you for being here as well. Our nation has always stood, as I said at the beginning, for the basic principles that if you work hard and take responsibility, you ought to be able to make a decent living, get paid a fair wage for your labor, and access opportunities that enable a secure place in our middle class. I say that was our principle. It was not always our reality. We speak about the labor movement. A lot of people fought for, walked for, spoke out for, and some died for the right of Americans to come together collectively and bargain for fair wages, good working conditions, and a good security for long term. When workers who make a minimum wage, today too many people in our country, that dream has become, in the words of the poet Langston Hughes, a dream deferred. I would add to that, a dream denied. When workers who make minimum wage full-time struggle to make ends meet, that dream is deferred and denied. When others are being forced to work off the clock or are denied overtime in a gross violation of our labor laws, it leads to a dream deferred, a dream denied. And when those who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own are cut off from their emergency unemployment insurance in the dead of winter because of partisan obstruction in Congress, that is a dream deferred and a dream denied. But I still believe, as all of you do because you're here, I believe that the American dream, and I know that Representative Ellison believes in the American dream, and nobody in Congress, I want to tell you, nobody in Congress is fighting harder for those who are being left out, ignored, and undermined. Nobody is fighting harder than Keith Ellison is for all of you. And I'm glad to be his partner in this effort. Leader Pelosi. I believe Leader Pelosi will be here a little later on. She's fighting for those values, and she, like me, believes Keith Ellison is our leader in articulating and focusing on those who are being left out and left behind. Democrats are fighting for that dream, for the rights of American workers to access good jobs that pay well and open doors to opportunity. We have an agenda that we call Jump Start the Middle Class. One way you jump start the middle class is to add people to the middle class. And the way you add people to the middle class is to make sure they are paid properly. Henry Ford used to say, if we don't pay them, they can't buy our cars. That was a simple, straightforward, honest reflection of why he paid his workers better than his competitors paid his workers. And he ultimately did better than his competitors. We're working to restore emergency unemployment insurance and strengthen labor laws that protect our workers and prevent Republicans from unraveling critical worker protections. Because we're all better off when workers are better off. The Congressional Progressive Caucus continues to play a key role in these efforts. Thanks, as I said earlier, to the leadership of Representative Ellison and Representative Grijalva and members of the caucus. It is crucial that Congress is able to hear the stories of Americans who are facing these struggles every day, as today's hearing makes possible. Thank you, Keith Ellison. I hope our colleagues across the aisle Many of whom have been holding up the restoration of emergency unemployment insurance and legislation to raise the minimum wage and create jobs. We'll make an effort to hear your stories. We talk about raising the minimum wage to $10.10 in about 3 years. If we were paying the same minimum wage that we paid in 1968 today, that minimum wage would be $10.77 an hour. Not 3 years from now, today in 2014 dollars, $10.77. That, in my opinion, is what we really ought to do. To make sure that people are living at least as well as they lived in 1968 and had the purchasing power that they had in 1968. So I want to hear from you guys, so I'll shut up. But Keith Ellison, nor I, nor the Democrats in the Congress of the United States, and I think some honest and decent Republicans who voted with us on some of these things, their voices will not be silenced either. But your voices of your real experiences and your struggles and your aspirations and hopes will be very, very powerful. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Ellison.
Thank you, Stan. And now I'd like to introduce our panel. Carla Caseta is the leader in the Good Jobs Nation. Thank you. We've just been joined by Mark Bocan. Mark, do you want to make a quick introductory statement? Or?
I'm waiting for him to pronounce your name.
And we've also been joined by Hank Johnson. But so would you guys like to make a quick statement before we get started, or would you like to just have us dive in? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll just, I am Hank Johnson. I'm from the great state of Georgia and glad to be here for this important briefing.
Thank you. But Mark, you want to say?
Sure. And I'm Mark Bocan from South Central, Wisconsin, and again, really appreciate everyone being here today. We've been doing a good job of getting some amendments passed, specifically in the federal contractor part, and would like to continue working on this, so thank you.
Very good, thank you. So Carla Caseta is the leader in the Good Jobs Nation campaign, and a campaign for low-wage federal contract workers standing up and demanding changes at their workplaces. Carla, thank you. I think you're going to share your own story. And then also we have Edilcia? Did I get it right? Edilcia. Right.
We're going to work on it.
Right, we're going to get it. Edilcia works for Good Jobs Nation to fight for changes for low-wage federal contract workers, too. And after 3 years as a fast food worker inside the Ronald Reagan building, Edilcia experienced severe wage theft. She's going to tell us about it today. Also, my friend Paco Fabian is one of the leaders in Good Jobs Nation, and he also doubles as an interpreter from time to time. And Carla Walter is Associate Director of the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress, and Carla focuses primarily on improving the economic security of American workers by increasing workers' wages and benefits, promoting workplace protections, advancing workers' rights, and before coming to CAP, she was a research analyst at Good Jobs First, providing support and research and grassroots advocacy. And finally, we have Mr. Robert Hilton Smith, who is the author of the Demos report, Underwriting Good Jobs, how to place over 20 million Americans on the pathway to the middle class using federal purchasing power. And that's what we're all about. So, well, Carla, you may begin.
Thank you very much to all of you for being here. I'm just going to make a quick introductory remark on behalf of Good Jobs Nation, and then I'll workers across America are taking action by hitting the streets and going to court. Over the past year, fast food workers have walked off their jobs in hundreds of cities and filed wage theft lawsuits in several states. And just 2 weeks ago, 4 truck drivers in Los Angeles went on strike to protest misclassification, the practice labeling workers as independent contractors to avoid paying overtime wages and payroll. But perhaps most alarming is the fact that wage theft is happening right here in our nation's capital. Federal contractors get away with breaking federal laws on federal property. Senate report recently revealed, as we mentioned, that 32% of the largest Department of Labor penalties for wage theft were levied against covered workers. Similarly, the National Employment Law Project found that nearly 1 in 3 low-wage contract workers in the D.C. metro area have reported wage theft. The President recently signed an executive order lifting the minimum wage for federal contract workers to $10.10. This is a great first step. But the workers of Good Jobs Nation are concerned that if contractors feel free to ignore the current wage and hour law, they will ignore the new $10.10 minimum wage as well. Now I want to introduce two federal contract workers, Carla Quesada and Edith Chabanega, who have gone on strike 8 times to call on the President to use his executive power to make sure the government only does business with companies that do 3 things. Don't steal worker wages, pay living wages and benefits, and allow them to collectively bargain so they don't need to keep striking in order to have their voices heard. Let me turn it over to Carla.
Before Carl begins, I just want to let everybody know we've been joined by some more members. Our chairman of our caucus, Javier Becerra, is here, and one of our, the chair of the Chief Deputy Whip, co-chair of the Seniors Caucus, and very active member of Progressive Caucus, Jan Schakowsky, also joined us.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Carla Quesada. He trabajado en el patio de comida del edificio Ronald Reagan por más de 4 años.
Hi, my name is Carla Quesada, and I've worked in the food court at the Ronald Reagan building for over 11 years.
El martes pasado recibí un reconocimiento como campeona del cambio por la Casa Blanca por mi participación en Good Job Nation. Como parte de esta campaña he salido en 9 veces a huelga con otros trabajadores de contratos federales durante el último año para protestar los salarios de pobreza y ganar la unión.
On Tuesday, I was honored by the White House as a champion of change because of my involvement in Good Jobs Nation. As part of the campaign, I have gone on strike with other low-wage federal contract workers 9 times over the past year to protest poverty pay and win a union.
Porque los trabajadores como yo salimos en huelga, el presidente proclamó una orden ejecutiva para alzar el salario mínimo bajo contratos federales a $10.10 por hora. Sí. A nombre de todos los trabajadores de Good Job Nation, me gustaría darles nuestras más sinceras gracias por apoyarnos y comunicar al presidente Obama que esto es algo importante, pero los salarios de pobreza no son el único problema que los trabajadores enfrentamos. Nuestros empleadores también nos roban.
Because workers like me walked off our jobs, the President issued an executive order raising the minimum wage for federal contract workers to $10.10 an hour. On behalf of all the Good Jobs Nation workers, I would like to say thank you to the Progressive Caucus and to other members of Congress that have been standing with us and encouraging the President to sign the executive order. But low pay is not the only problem workers like me face. Our employers are also stealing from us.
Antes trabajaba más de 40 horas por semana en el edificio Reagan. Nunca recibí pago por trabajar horas extras. Para evitar pagarme esas horas, mi empleador decía que yo trabajaba en 2 negocios diferentes, aunque no lo hacía, y me entregaba 2 cheques diferentes.
Even though I often worked more than 40 hours a week at the Ronald Reagan Building, I never received a dime in overtime pay. To get around paying me for the extra hours, my employer would claim that I worked at 2 different stores, even though I didn't, and would issue me 2 different checks.
Debido a este robo, se me deben más de $22,000 en salario y daños materiales.
Because of this wage theft, I am owed more than $22,000 in back pay and damages.
No soy la única trabajadora bajo contratos federales a la que están engañando. El año pasado, Good Job Nation ayudó a muchos trabajadores de Union Station y el edificio Reagan a presentar quejas formales de robo de salario frente al Departamento de Trabajo y recobrar los 4 millones en salario y daños que se nos deben.
I'm not the only federal contract worker that is being cheated. Last year, Good Jobs Nation helped low-wage federal contract workers at Union Station and the Ronald Reagan Building file formal wage theft complaints with the U.S. Labor Department to reclaim $4 million in back pay and damages.
Estoy aquí dando este testimonio porque quiero que sepan que si los empleadores no pueden seguirles las leyes de salario mínimo como existen ahora, no seguirán la orden ejecutiva de 10.10 por hora.
I'm testifying in front of you here today because I want you to know that if employers don't follow current minimum wage and overtime laws, they will not follow the new 1010 executive order.
Yo vine a este país buscando una oportunidad que trabajando duro uno mejoraría su situación económica, pero solo he sufrido explotación. Estoy muy triste que en este país se permita el robo de salario en edificios federales.
I came to this country because I believe America is a land of opportunity. If you work hard, you will be rewarded, not exploited. I'm shocked and saddened that a country of laws would allow wage theft on government property.
Agradezco lo que el Congreso está haciendo para luchar en contra de la injusticia. El sueño americano aún es posible. Es por eso que seguimos luchando para trabajar dignos. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
I applaud Congress, members of Congress for standing up against this injustice. I still believe in the American dream. That's why my colleagues and I will continue to fight for a good jobs nation. Yes, we can.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Edilcia Vanegas. Trabajé por 7 años en el Ronald Reagan Building en el Food Court.
My name is Edilcia Vanegas. Good afternoon, my name is Edilcia Vanegas, and I worked at the food court at the Ronald Reagan Building for 7 years.
Trabajaba por 10 o 12 horas diarias, los 7 días a la semana, y nunca recibí pagos por horas extras. Es más, me deben $30,000 por salarios e indemnización.
Even though I worked 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, I never received a dime in overtime pay. I am owed over $30,000 in back wages and damages.
Thank you. Para evitar el pago de horas extras, me obligaban a ponchar en diferentes computadoras, siendo la persona el mismo dueño de 2 negocios. Nos daban 2 cheques de diferentes negocios y no hay posibilidad que ustedes puedan registrar y que puedan ver o sea, no hay ninguna prueba que yo hice 40 horas o más de 40 horas en ese negocio.
In order to avoid paying me overtime, my employer would force me to clock in and out at 2 different businesses within the Reagan building, both of which he owned. So even though I worked more than 70 hours a week, the timesheets would show that the timesheets would not show that I worked more than 40 hours at any one location.
Desde que empecé a participar en la campaña de Good Job Nation, a salir a las huelgas para protestar contra los robos de salarios, mi empleador me cortó las horas a 20 horas por semana.
After I joined the Good Jobs Nation campaign and went on strike to protest wage theft, my employer retaliated and cut my schedule to just 20 hours a week.
No soy la única persona que han estafado por los contratistas federales. Hace un año nos unimos trabajadores del edificio Reagan y la Union Station para presentar una queja formal por robo de salarios al Departamento de Trabajo por $4 millones por robos de salario y mantenimiento.
I'm not the only one who's being cheated by government contractors. Last year, I joined with Union Station and Ronald Reagan Building food court workers to file a wage theft complaint with the Department of Labor to reclaim over $4 million in back pay and damages.
Esperábamos recibir justicia rápido, pero ha pasado un año que pusimos la demanda. El silencio del Departamento de Trabajo es muy preocupante.
We hoped for swift justice from the Department of Labor, but a year has passed since we filed our complaint and we have not heard anything from the DOL.
Muchos de mis compañeros pues nos sentimos desalentados porque nos arriesgamos a expresar las injusticias de nuestros empleadores, pero ellos continúan con los mismos, o sea, no tienen miedo a las leyes federales.
Many of my coworkers feel discouraged because we took a risk to expose wrongdoing, but our employers still continue to operate as if there's nothing wrong. They continue breaking federal laws on federal property.
Y para poner las cosas en claro, debido al Departamento de Trabajo no actúan rápidamente desde que alzamos la voz, los dueños de los negocios se dieron cuenta que no hay consecuencias por violar las leyes.
Sí.
Y emprender más actividades legales, usando como el cierre de gobierno como excusa para despedirme. Desde el cierre de gobierno no he podido trabajar hasta hace una semana. Soy madre soltera, tengo 4 hijos que mantener y no es justo lo que nos han robado y no nos han podido pagar lo que nos deben.
To add insult to injury, because the Labor Department didn't act quickly after I spoke out, my employer felt like she could get away with even more illegal behavior. Using the government shutdown as an excuse, she fired me. I'm a single mother, I have to support my family, and up until last week, I had not been able to find work since the government shutdown.
Yo vine a este país porque creí que es un país de que uno puede expresarse libremente, donde enfrentar las injusticias y no ser castigado. Pero veo que hasta el sol de hoy he sido severamente castigada.
I came to this country because I believed that America was a place of freedom. You could speak out about injustice and not be punished. Well, I spoke out and I've been punished.
Me entristece que este país las leyes se presten para violar las leyes, operen los edificios federales y que los que estamos llamando la atención a esta injusticia suframos represalias.
I'm shocked and saddened that a country of laws would allow lawbreaking on government property and allow whistleblowers like me to be retaliated against for shining a light on wrongdoing.
Continúo mi participación en Good Nation porque he sufrido injusticias e inmorales gracias por el apoyo a luchar y para terminar con los robos de salarios en los edificios federales.
I continue to be involved in the Good Jobs Nation campaign because what happened to me and my coworkers is wrong and it's immoral. Thank you for standing up with us and fighting to end wage theft on federal property. Thank you.
Y esperamos que ustedes pues nos ayuden y que nos ayuden más que todo con el Departamento de Trabajo, que nos den rápidamente una contestación, porque la verdad que todos necesitamos, y no solo yo. Como pueden ver, habemos varias personas, y no solo nosotros, hay mucho más personas que queremos que no más robo de salario.
And I'd like to ask you for your help, particularly with the Department of Labor and this ongoing investigation on wage theft. As you can see, it's not just me. Many of my coworkers are here with me, and there's even more that weren't able to make it today. So thank you.
Thank you. You know, I just want to now, yep. Thank you very much, Edilcia. We've been joined by Leader Pelosi, who is the leader of the Democratic caucus. We're very pleased that she's here, and by her presence, she demonstrates how she cares about workers and does it all the time and every day. We've also been joined by the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Mr. Steve Israel, who's there with us. And I'd like to invite either one to make a comment, if they would, please.
Thank you very much. Because they're calling votes, I think the most important use of our time is to hear the rest of the testimony for the record. I came here to pay my respects to you, Mr. Chairman, of this important meeting. Thank you to our chairman of our caucus, and other members are here, Mr. Bokan, John Schakowsky, Steny Hoyer, who was here, Congressman Johnson, and others. And let me just say this. Carla and Edilcia, thank you for your courage. Thank you, Mr. Ellison, for shining a bright light on this situation, wage theft in our country. But we can't shine a light unless we have the courage of those who will step forward and give us the particulars of it. Right. So what you are doing today is very courageous. I'm sorry for the price you had to pay for your courage. We want to make both of you make your testimony make a difference in your lives and in others. It's just unthinkable that they would have you work all those hours and divide them so you don't have 40 hours in order to qualify for other benefits, and then you're fired for complaining about it. And I also want to thank Carla Walter from Center for American Progress, Robert Hilton Smith from Demos for being here as well today. And thank you for interpreting for us, Robert. But again, so much I want to say on this subject, but what's more important is what we hear from our guests. And I'll yield to Mr. Israel.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I'll be very brief because those bells that you heard mean that we have votes, which means you were all saved by the bell from long speeches. I want to thank the Leader and Keith Ellison, who's really the conscience of the Congress when it comes to working families and middle-class economic security. And very, very briefly, you couldn't have a more vivid demonstration of contrasting priorities than what is happening right now in this place. Republicans today made a decision that they would hire a bunch of lawyers at $400 an hour to sue the president. We are here because we believe that we should be protecting working families and middle-class workers from having their wages stolen. There's a big difference. This is about who's got your back. This is about who you're for. In my state, we employed lawyers, but you know what we employed lawyers for in New York? To sue companies that were stealing employees' wages. Our Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, recovered $1 million in stolen wages for workers who lost those wages. And so if we're going to hire lawyers, let's not hire lawyers to sue the president. Let's hire lawyers to recover wages for working people and for middle-class people. Instead of protecting maximum subsidies for big corporations, let's protect a livable wage for working families. So I want to again thank Chairman Ellison and my colleagues, Leader Pelosi, my sister, I'm not going to say older sister or younger sister, but my sister, Jan Schakowsky, for her progressive voice in this Congress, and I look forward to continuing to partner with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Walter, would you like to testify? I would like to just tell everybody in a few minutes after Hilton Smith, we may have to adjourn because we're voting, but we are recording this entire meeting, and your testimony has been very important. So, Ms. Walter, please.
Chairman Ellison, members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to present testimony in support of using the federal procurement system to protect workers from wage theft. My name is Carla Walter. I'm Associate Director of the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Today in my testimony, I will make 3 main points. First, the federal contracting system can play an important role in protecting the rights of American workers and upholding strong standards among federal contractors. Second, far too often companies receiving federal contracts violate wage and other workplace laws. And third, contracting with companies that violate workplace laws also harms taxpayers, the government, and law-abiding businesses. The federal government spends hundreds of billions of dollars each year contracting out everything from janitorial services to the design and manufacture of sophisticated weapon systems. More than 1 in 5 Americans is employed by a firm with contracts with the federal government, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. Since the passage of the Davis-Bacon Act more than 80 years ago, the government has sought to uphold strong standards for federally contracted workers. And as recently as this past spring, President Obama used his executive authority to establish a $10.10 per hour minimum wage for federally contracted workers and concession workers. When standards are properly implemented, they can make a significant and positive impact on the lives of the employees of federal contractors. The new contractor minimum wage order promises to lift the wages of nearly 200,000 working Americans, allowing these workers to move up the economic ladder and reduce their dependence on government programs. Similarly, after President Lyndon Johnson signed the Executive Order 11246 to ensure that all people working for the federal government or working for federal contractors had an equal opportunity for employment, studies show that employment of women and people of color increased significantly faster in companies with federal contracts than non-contractor establishments. Yet too often the contracting process resembles a race to the bottom despite strong standards to ensure Americans working for federal contractors are treated fairly. The federal government is supposed to ensure that contractors have a satisfactory record of performance, integrity, business integrity, and business ethics. But companies with long track records of breaking workplace laws continue to receive federal contracts with no strings attached. A 2013 report from the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee found that government contractors are often among the worst violators of wage theft laws. These laws prevent employers from paying less than the minimum wage, failing to pay overtime, forcing employees to work off the clock, stealing workers' tips, and violating prevailing wage laws designed to protect workers on federal contracts. The report found that 35% of the largest assessments for wage theft between fiscal years 2007 and 2012 were levied against government contractors. Workers at these companies were shortchanged by $82 million, with violations that included not paying workers at a chemical weapons storage facility for time spent donning safety gear, failing to pay more than 25,000 call center workers for overtime, and misclassifying workers responsible for helping recently released prisoners re-enter society and find work. Yet these companies continued to receive government contracts. Contracting with companies that have egregious records of workplace violations not only harms workers, but also frequently results in poor contract performance, wasting taxpayer dollars and delivering low-quality services to the government. Analysis from the Center for American Progress Action Fund found that 1 in 4 companies that committed the worst workplace violations, and this includes wage theft and safety violations, and later received federal contracts, had significant performance problems. These problems range from contractors submitting fraudulent billing statements to the federal government, to cost overruns, performance problems, and schedule delays during the development of major weapons systems, to an oil rig explosion that spilled millions of barrels of oil in the Gulf of Mexico. Finally, the current system puts law-abiding businesses at a competitive disadvantage as against bad actors that lower costs by cutting corners in workplace safety and paying less than what they're legally owed, workers are legally owed. Cities and states have found that the adoption of laws to raise workplace standards among contractors actually increases competition among responsible bidders. For example, after Maryland implemented a contractor living standard, the average number of bids for contracts in the state increased by 27%. Despite spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on contracts, the federal government does not have strong checks in place to effectively review the responsibility records of companies before giving out contracts, nor does it impose conditions on violators to encourage them to reform their practices. By working together, Congress and President Obama have the opportunity to ensure that only law-abiding companies that respect their workers are able to receive government contracts. This will help make a considerable difference to the 1 in 5 Americans who work for companies with federal contracts, improve the quality of services provided to the government and prevent the waste of taxpayer dollars, and allow law-abiding businesses to compete on an even playing field. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hilton Smith, you're up. As Mr. Hilton Smith is taking his seat, I just want to point out that we had about 6 or 8 letters from trade associations representing federal contractors, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, urging people to vote no on our amendment, and yet it passed anyway. And so, but it did shock me a little bit that those businesses were not trying to raise the performance of their businesses, but actually just try to block their accountability. Mr. Hilton Smith.
Thank you, Representative Ellison, and members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Robbie Hilton Smith, and I'm a policy analyst at DEMOS, which is a public policy organization working for an America where we all have an equal say in our democracy and an equal chance in our economy. And I'm happy to be here today to testify on federal contracting, which, as you all know, is not only one of the largest ways the federal government interacts with the private sector economy, but is a really ripe opportunity for the government to actually incentivize the private sector to create middle-class jobs. So as my colleague Ms. Walter mentioned, federal contracting reaches nearly every corner of the private sector. You know, about a fifth of all private sector workers work for firms that do some federal contracting. But in our recent report, Underwriting Good Jobs, we chose to focus on kind of a subset of these firms, and we looked at firms for which federal contracting represented 10% or more of their yearly revenue. So we call these firms federally supported firms, and they accounted for 78% of all federal contracting in 2013. So you can see most of the dollars are going to firms that rely really heavily on federal contracting. And these federally supported firms, which include many of the largest private companies, collectively employ more than 6.6 million workers and brought in more than $1 trillion in revenue in 2013. And they span all the major industries, but are really concentrated in manufacturing, administrative, waste management services, insurance, the like. And because federal contracts are almost exclusively awarded to the lowest bidder, without consideration of bidding firms' employment policies and health and safety records, the current federal contract process actually incentivizes firms to minimize costs in any way possible, often at the expense of their workers. That's assuredly exactly why you receive those letters, because they don't have to pay a dime more than they already are. So we found that that almost 3.5 million workers at these federally supported firms, which is over half their total workforce, earns wages at or below 150% of the federal poverty line for a family of 4. So a big chunk of all of these firms that are heavily dependent on federal dollars are not earning living wages. By contracting the lowest bidder, our government is not only contributing to the epidemic of low-wage employment, it's actually subsidizing that low-wage employment, since many of these workers, these same workers, are forced to rely on federal safety net programs. We calculate that low-wage employees of these federally supported contracting firms cost the federal government more than $3.6 billion a year in EITC, Medicaid, and SNAP spending. So additionally, as we've all talked about, these federally supported firms are also some of the most egregious violators of the country's wage and safety laws. And according to this same Senate Help Committee report that we're all citing, one of the companies assessed the 200 largest penalties for health, safety, and wage laws between 2007 and 2012. 49 of those were federal contractors. They've paid a total of $196 million in penalties, but these same 49 firms were awarded $81 billion in federal contracts in 2012, which is 16% of all the contracting done in that year. So, we're really heavily rewarding these firms that not only pay bad wages, cost us money, and, violate really important health and safety laws in a really major way. So, our federal tax dollars should not be underwriting low-wage jobs and illegal workplace practices. However, we could change contracting firms' behavior by changing the process by which contracts are awarded, by barring firms who violate labor laws from bidding on federal contracts and giving preferential bidding to qualified firms who pay highest wages and offer the best benefits. The federal contracting process could engender a race to the top rather than a race to the bottom. Through an executive order, the President can empower our federal contracting authorities to add these and other requirements to the bidding process. Such an order would be far from unprecedented. President Johnson, through executive order 11246, barred contractors from discriminating on any of their employment decisions, not just those directly paid for with contracting dollars. So we can ask the President to really affect these entire firms. And such an executive order to promote good jobs and raise workplace standards in our contracting footprint would be a major step towards the President's central goal of rebuilding the American middle class.
Mr. Hilton-Smith, thank you very much. Mr. Hilton-Smith, thanks a lot. Unfortunately, there is no time left on the clock. There are 312 people who have not voted, so they're not going to close the board without us getting over there. But we actually, the 15 minutes we have to get to the floor to vote are out. So I don't think we're going to have much time to do any questioning today, but I think if there's any members here who want to ask a quick question, we might be able to leave, but I'll defer to anyone who has a question they want to ask, and then we'll...
Tell us what the status of the case before Department of Labor is?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Okay. I just want to thank our experts, and I want to especially thank Edilicia and Carla Quesada, also Carla Welter and Robert Hilton-Smith. Do we have your report, Robert? You did a underwriting job.
We'll get to everybody.
Okay. I want to be sure, but. I really thank so much the workers for standing up for yourselves and giving us the opportunity to stand with you. Thank you very much.
And there was a question, what's the status of the cases?
So my name is Paco Fabian. I work with the Good Jobs Nation campaign. The status of the DOL complaints on wage theft is, honestly, we don't know. We know that they've investigated. We know that investigators have gone into both Union Station and the Reagan Building to talk to the employers. But in the case of the Reagan Building, it's been over a year, and we have not heard anything from the Department of Labor.
Well, we can follow up, and we will. But I think, you want to say something, Mark, before we wrap up? I just want to say this. This is a very important issue. It's also a hidden issue. A lot of people don't know how bad it is. And if we're paying people $7.25 and they're not even paying them that, then we're really abusing the public, and there's no doubt why we have such income inequality. So you guys, on behalf of the Progressive Caucus, thank you very much. Thanks to Good Job Nation. Thank Paco Fabian and Joe Giavarzi, and thank all of you for coming. And we'll be in touch. All right.